Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the park trees as John Harris walked home from another exhausting day at the auto shop. Two little girls, maybe 8 or 9, stood by the pathway looking lost and frightened. One looked up with pleading eyes. "Mister, could you please give us some food?" John stopped, something tugging at his heart. "Where are your parents, girls?" The twin with darker hair whispered, We don't have a home." John started to walk away, but their desperate faces haunted him. Something wasn't right. Against his better judgment, he decided to follow them. Everything was about to change. John Harris carried his 32 years like a man who'd seen too much too young. 3 tours in Afghanistan had taught him to notice details others missed. The way people held themselves when they were lying, the difference between genuine fear and manufactured drama, the particular stillness that preceded danger. Now, as a single father working as a mechanic in downtown Minneapolis, those skills served him differently. He used them to read his 5-year-old daughter Maya's moods, to spot which customers were trying to scam him, and to navigate the careful balance of his new civilian life. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. Sarah had wanted more than John could give her, more presence, more emotional availability, more of the man he'd been before the war. She wasn't wrong exactly, but knowing that didn't make the loneliness any easier. This particular Thursday, he'd worked late replacing an engine in a '98 Honda, his hands black with grease and his back aching from bending over the motor. Maya was spending the night at her mother's, which meant John would go home to an empty apartment, heat up leftover pizza, and fall asleep watching whatever was on Netflix. The shortcut through Riverside Park usually saved him 10 minutes walking to his apartment. Today, it changed his life. The 2 girls stood near the old oak tree, close enough together that they were clearly siblings, possibly twins. Everything about them screamed neglect. Dirty clothes, unwashed hair, the hollow look around their eyes that John recognized from refugee camps overseas. But it was their posture that caught his trained attention. They weren't just hungry or homeless kids. They were scared. Really scared. The kind of fear that came from running from something specific, not just general hardship. "Mister," the slightly taller one said, stepping forward with the kind of forced bravery that broke John's heart, "could you please give us some food? We haven't eaten today." John studied their faces. Identical twins, probably 8 or 9 years old, with dark hair and enormous brown eyes. Their clothes were wrong too, expensive ones, designer brands that had been worn too long without washing. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. The twins exchanged a look loaded with meaning John couldn't interpret. "We don't have a home," the second girl whispered, her voice barely audible. John felt something shift in his chest. He'd walked past plenty of homeless people, dropped change in cups, bought meals when he could afford it. But something about these 2 felt different, more urgent. "What are your names?" he asked, crouching down to their eye level. "I'm Lily," said the first girl. "This is Emma. We're twins." "How old are you girls?" "9, Lily answered. Emma hadn't spoken except for that initial whisper. John looked around the park. It was getting dark, temperature dropping. Even if these weren't his kids, even if getting involved was complicated, he couldn't leave 2 9-year-old girls alone in a park at night. "Are you hungry right now?" he asked. Both girls nodded eagerly. "Okay, there's a diner across the street. Let's get you some dinner and we can figure out what to do next." The girls' faces lit up with relief and something that looked like disbelief, as if they'd expected rejection. As they walked toward the diner, John noticed they stayed close together, constantly scanning their surroundings. Lily did all the talking while Emma remained silent, watchful. Their dynamic reminded him of soldiers on patrol, one person communicating while the other maintained security. These weren't just homeless kids. They were hiding from something. At the diner, John ordered them cheeseburgers, fries, and chocolate milkshakes while trying to piece together their story. They ate like they were starving, but with careful manners that suggested good upbringing. "How long have you been on your own?" John asked carefully. Lily looked at Emma, some silent communication passing between them. "A long time," Lily said finally. Since our mommy went away. Where did your mommy go? We don't know. She just left one day. And then other people came to our house looking for us. We had to run. John felt ice in his stomach. This wasn't just abandonment. Someone was hunting these kids. Who was looking for you? The twins went completely still, and Emma spoke for the first time since the park. Bad people. People who want to hurt us. John looked at these two little girls, clearly traumatized, obviously in danger, trusting him with information that could get them killed, and made a decision that would change all their lives. Girls, I'm going to help you. But first I need to know the truth. All of it. Can you tell me what you're really running from? The diner booth suddenly felt like a confessional as Lily and Emma exchanged another of their meaningful looks. John waited, recognizing the moment when someone decides whether to trust you with their life. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Our real name isn't what we told you. We're not just Lily and Emma. We're Lily and Emma Blackwood. John's blood went cold. He'd heard that name. Everyone in Minneapolis had heard that name. Thomas Blackwood, the tech billionaire who disappeared 3 months ago with his wife and twin daughters. The FBI had been investigating it as either a kidnapping or murder. The news had speculated about business rivals, foreign agents, corporate espionage. Thomas Blackwood was your father? John asked carefully. Both girls nodded, tears starting to form in their eyes. Daddy told us never to tell anyone our real names, Emma said, her voice gaining strength now that the secret was out. He said bad people would try to find us if they knew who we were. Where is your father now? Lily's face crumpled. We don't know. One night men came to our house. Daddy woke us up and said we had to leave right away. He put us in the car and drove really fast, but then there was an accident. Emma picked up the story. Our car crashed. Daddy was hurt really bad. He gave us this. She pulled a small device from her pocket. A GPS tracker, John realized. He said to keep it safe and never let anyone see it. What happened after the crash? Some people found us, Lily continued. They said they were police, but Daddy had taught us a secret code. If real police found us, they would say the code word. These people didn't know it. John felt sick. These 9-year-old girls had been running from kidnappers for 3 months, living on the streets, surviving by their wits and whatever money they could find or earn. How have you been taking care of yourselves? We know which restaurants throw away good food, Emma said matter-of-factly. And we know how to hide. Daddy taught us that too. But we're really tired, Lily added, her voice breaking, and scared. We don't know if Daddy's alive or if the bad people found him. John studied their faces, intelligent, traumatized, but with the peculiar strength that came from surviving the unthinkable. Why are you telling me this? He asked. How do you know I'm not one of the bad people? Lily smiled for the first time since he'd met her. Because you asked if we were hungry before you asked our names. Bad people always want to know who we are first. The simple logic of it stunned John. These kids had developed their own survival protocols, their own ways of distinguishing threat from safety. Also, Emma added quietly, you have kind eyes, like Daddy. John felt something break open in his chest. He thought about Maya, safe with her mother tonight. He thought about what would happen to his daughter if he disappeared, if she was alone and hunted and had no one to trust. Girls, I'm going to help you, but I need you to understand something. I'm not rich. I'm not powerful. I'm just a guy who fixes cars. If those bad people are really after you, I might not be able to protect you. We don't need someone powerful, Lily said with devastating simplicity. We just need someone who cares. John looked at these two extraordinary children who'd survived 3 months of hell through nothing but each other and their father's training. I care, he said simply. The question is, what do we do now? Can we stay with you? Emma asked. Just for tonight? We haven't slept inside in a long time. John thought about the implications. Harboring missing children, even if they were running from kidnappers, could get him arrested. Getting involved with whatever had happened to Thomas Blackwood could get him killed. But looking at their faces, He realized he didn't have a choice. Not really. "You can stay with me," he said. "But tomorrow, we need to figure out how to get you safe, really safe." The girls' relief was visible, their bodies literally sagging as tension they'd been carrying for months finally released. "Thank you," Lily whispered. "We were starting to think no one would ever help us." As they walked to John's apartment, he noticed they stayed close to buildings, avoided streetlights, and constantly checked behind them. Their father had trained them well, but no child should have to live like a fugitive. In his small apartment, John gave them clean clothes, Maya's things that she'd outgrown, and watched them take their first hot shower in months. When they emerged, clean and wearing clothes that fit, he could see they were beautiful children, clearly well cared for before their world collapsed. "Mr. John," Lily said as he tucked them into his bed, he'd take the couch. "Are you going to call the police?" John considered lying, giving them false comfort. But these kids had survived on truth and careful judgment. They deserved honesty. "I don't know yet," he said. "First, I want to understand what we're really dealing with. But I promise you this. Whatever I decide, I'll talk to you about it first. No more adults making decisions about your lives without telling you." For the first time in 3 months, Lily and Emma fell asleep feeling safe. And for the first time since his divorce, John fell asleep feeling like he had a purpose beyond just surviving. John woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of a car door slamming outside his apartment building. His military instincts kicked in immediately. He was on his feet and moving to the window before his conscious mind had processed what he'd heard. A black SUV sat in the parking lot, its occupants invisible behind tinted windows. It hadn't been there when they'd arrived home. "Girls," he whispered urgently, moving to his bedroom. "Wake up. Right now." Lily and Emma were alert instantly, their eyes wide with fear that had become too familiar. "The bad people," Emma whispered. "I don't know, but we need to move." John's apartment was on the second floor with a fire escape outside his bedroom window. He'd chosen it specifically because it reminded him of safe houses in Afghanistan, multiple exit routes, clear sight lines, defensible positions. "Can you girls climb?" he asked quietly, gathering their few possessions. Both nodded. Of course they could climb. They'd been surviving on the streets for 3 months. John eased the window open, grateful he'd kept the fire escape in good repair. The girls moved with practiced silence, their father's training evident in every careful step. They were halfway down the fire escape when John's front door exploded inward. Through his bedroom window, he could see flashlight beams sweeping his apartment, professional search patterns. These weren't random criminals. They were trained operators. The girls reached the alley first, and John dropped down beside them just as voices echoed from his apartment above. "They're not here," someone called, "but the beds are still warm." "Check the fire escape," another voice ordered. John grabbed the girls' hands and ran. They made it 3 blocks before the SUV caught up with them, its headlights suddenly blazing from behind as it turned onto their street. John pulled the girls into an alley, pressing them against a brick wall as the vehicle cruised past. "How did they find us?" Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. John's mind raced through possibilities. He'd paid cash at the diner. He hadn't used his phone. He hadn't told anyone about the girls. The GPS tracker, he realized. "Emma, that device your father gave you. They might be using it to track you." Emma's face went white. "But Daddy said to keep it safe. He said it was important." "It is important," John said, thinking fast. "But maybe not the way you think." He looked at the small device in Emma's palm. It was more sophisticated than a simple tracker. It looked like military-grade equipment. "What if it's not just a GPS?" he said slowly. "What if your father gave you evidence, something the bad people need?" The pieces clicked together in John's mind. Thomas Blackwood hadn't just disappeared. He'd discovered something that made him a target. The crash hadn't been an accident. And whatever was on that device was worth killing children to obtain. "We need help," John said. "Real help." "No," Lily grabbed his arm. "Daddy said never to trust the police. He said some of them were working with the bad people." John understood. Thomas Blackwood had been running from a conspiracy that included law enforcement. That's why he'd trained his daughters to survive alone, why he'd given them a code word system, why he'd prepared them for the worst. "Not the police," John said. "Someone else. Someone your father would have trusted." He thought about his military contacts, people he'd served with who now worked in private security or government agencies, people whose loyalty couldn't be bought. But first, they needed to get somewhere safe. "Girls, I need you to trust me one more time. Can you do that?" Both girls nodded, though Emma clutched the device protectively. John led them through back alleys and side streets, using urban warfare tactics he'd learned in Kandahar. 20 minutes later, they reached his auto shop, a building he'd specifically chosen because it had good security and multiple exit routes. Inside the shop, surrounded by the familiar smells of motor oil and metal, John finally felt like he could think clearly. "Show me the device again," he said to Emma. She handed it over reluctantly. Under the shop's bright work lights, John could see it wasn't just a GPS tracker. It was some kind of encrypted storage device, disguised to look like a simple locator. "Your father was smart," he told the girls. "He hid something on here that the bad people need. That's why they've been chasing you." "What kind of something?" Lily asked. "Evidence, probably. Something that proves what they did to your family." John connected the device to his work computer, hoping to access whatever Thomas Blackwood had hidden. The screen filled with encrypted files, financial records, and what looked like correspondence between high-level government officials and private contractors. Even with his limited understanding, John could see this was explosive. Evidence of corruption, money laundering, possibly treason. No wonder they were willing to kill children to get it back. "This is bigger than I thought," he murmured. That's when the shop's security alarm started blaring. John looked at the monitors. 3 vehicles had surrounded the building, and armed figures were moving into position. "How did they find us so fast?" he wondered aloud. Lily's face went pale with realization. "They put something on us at your apartment while we were sleeping." John checked their clothes and found it. A tiny tracking chip sewn into the lining of Emma's jacket. "They've been following us this whole time," he realized. This was a trap. They wanted to see where we'd go, who we'd contact. The first window exploded inward as someone threw a flashbang grenade. John grabbed both girls, pulling them toward the back of the shop where he kept his motorcycle. It was their only chance. "Hold on tight," he told them, starting the bike. "And whatever happens, don't let go of that device." The back wall of the shop exploded outward as John gunned the motorcycle through it, debris showering around them as they burst into the alley. Behind them, gunfire erupted, but they were already moving, the bike's engine screaming as John pushed it to its limits. "Where are we going?" Lily shouted over the wind. John had made his decision. There was only one person he trusted completely, one person with the resources and connections to keep these girls safe and expose whatever conspiracy had destroyed their family. "We're going to find someone your father would have trusted," he shouted back. "Someone who can't be bought or threatened or corrupted." As they raced through the empty streets, John realized he wasn't just saving these girls. He was choosing to become the kind of man Maya would be proud to call her father, the kind of man who stood up to monsters, even when the odds were impossible, the kind of man who didn't abandon children in their darkest hour. Behind them, the city burned with searchlights and sirens, but ahead lay the possibility of justice, safety, and something John hadn't felt in years. The certainty that he was doing exactly what he was meant to do. The safe house belonged to Marcus Rodriguez, John's former commanding officer, who now ran a private security firm specializing in witness protection. If anyone could keep 2 hunted children safe while exposing a massive conspiracy, it was Marcus. The house sat on 50 acres in rural Wisconsin, surrounded by security systems that made Fort Knox look casual. For the first time in 3 months, Lily and Emma could sleep without fear. But John quickly learned that physical safety was only the beginning. The girls had survived by never trusting anyone completely, never staying anywhere long enough to feel comfortable, never believing that help would last. It's temporary, right? Lily asked on their third day, as she watched John unpack clothes he'd bought them. We'll have to run again soon? No more running, John promised. Marcus's people are working with the FBI to decode your father's evidence. Soon, the bad people won't be able to hurt you anymore. Emma had been almost completely silent since their escape, communicating mainly through looks with her sister. John recognized the signs: trauma response, emotional shutdown, the mind's way of protecting itself from overwhelming fear. It was Maya, surprisingly, who broke through Emma's walls. Sarah had agreed to bring Maya to the safe house after John explained the situation. His 5-year-old daughter took one look at the silent twin and appointed herself Emma's personal entertainment committee. Want to see my Pokemon cards? Maya asked Emma on her first visit. I have a really shiny Charizard that's super rare. Emma's eyes showed interest for the first time in days. I used to have Pokemon cards, she whispered, before we had to run away. You can have some of mine, Maya declared with 5-year-old generosity. Sisters should share. John watched his daughter instinctively understand what trained counselors had failed to grasp. Sometimes healing began with simple kindness from another child. Over the following weeks, the safe house transformed from a hiding place into something approaching a home. Marcus had converted the barn into a workshop where John could work on engines. He needed to stay busy, and the girls slowly began to believe they might actually be safe. The breakthrough came when Emma asked John to teach her how to change a car's oil. Why do you want to learn that? He asked. Because when we were hiding, sometimes we had to fix things ourselves. I want to know how to fix important things. John understood. Emma needed to feel capable, needed skills that would help her survive. It wasn't about cars, it was about control. Okay, he said, but first let me teach you something even more important. He showed her how to identify which cars were safe to approach, how to spot surveillance equipment, how to disappear in a crowd. Not because she'd ever need those skills again, but because knowing them would help her feel secure. Lily, meanwhile, had appointed herself the family historian. She found an old photo album and began documenting their new life. Pictures of Emma learning to work on engines, Maya teaching both twins to braid friendship bracelets, John cooking dinner for his suddenly expanded family. For when Daddy comes back, she explained, so he can see we were okay. John didn't have the heart to tell her that Thomas Blackwood's body had been found the previous week. The girls weren't ready for that truth yet. The real transformation began when Sarah suggested the girls might like to start school again. What if the bad people find us there? Lily asked, the old fear flickering in her eyes. The bad people are gone, John said gently. Marcus's team found them. They can't hurt you anymore. It was true. The evidence on Thomas Blackwood's device had exposed a network of corruption that reached into Congress, several federal agencies, and multinational corporations. The arrests had made international headlines. The people who'd hunted the girls were either dead or in federal prison, but John understood that knowing you're safe intellectually and feeling safe emotionally were different things entirely. The first day of school, both girls clung to John's hands as they walked toward the building. What if we don't remember how to be normal kids? Emma whispered. Then you'll learn, John said simply. Just like you learned how to survive. You're the bravest kids I've ever met. School will be easy compared to what you've already done. He was right. Within a month, both girls were thriving. Lily joined the art club and began painting pictures of their new life. Emma discovered she had a talent for mathematics and started tutoring younger students. But the most meaningful change happened at home, in small moments that John treasured. Like the evening Emma called him Dad for the first time, so naturally that she didn't even seem to notice. Or the morning Lily made him coffee and proudly announced she was going to learn how to fix motorcycles so she could help with his business someday. Or the night both girls crawled into bed with him during a thunderstorm, not because they were afraid of the weather, but because they'd finally learned that homes were places where you went to people when you needed comfort. 6 months after that first meeting in the park, John stood in the barn workshop watching Emma explain engine compression ratios to Maya, while Lily painted a portrait of their makeshift family. Sarah appeared beside him, following his gaze. "They're good for you," she said quietly, "and you're good for them." "Think so?" "I know so. You're the father you always wanted to be, John. You just needed the right kids to show you how." 1 year later, John stood in a courthouse wearing the same suit he'd worn to his divorce proceedings. But this time, his hands weren't shaking. Judge Patricia Martinez looked down from her bench at the three of them. John in his navy suit, Lily in her favorite blue dress, Emma wearing the watch that had belonged to her birth father. "Mr. Harris," the judge said, "adoption is a permanent commitment. Are you prepared to be responsible for Lily and Emma Blackwood for the rest of their lives?" "Yes, Your Honor," John said without hesitation. "And girls, do you understand that Mr. Harris will become your legal father? That you'll be a family in the eyes of the law?" Both twins nodded solemnly. Emma stepped forward. "Your Honor, we already are a family. This just makes it official." The judge smiled. "In that case, by the power vested in me by the state of Minnesota, I hereby grant this petition for adoption. Congratulations to the Harris family." The gavel fell with finality that felt like a blessing. Outside the courthouse, Maya threw confetti she'd saved from her birthday party, while Sarah took pictures of their expanded family. "So what now?" Lily asked, as they walked toward John's truck, now a full-size vehicle to accommodate his larger family. "Now we go home," John said simply. Home was the house they'd bought together 6 months ago, a modest place with a big backyard where the girls were planting a garden. Lily grew sunflowers because they reminded her of hope. Emma preferred vegetables because, she said, practical plants were more reliable than pretty ones. That evening, as John tucked his daughters into their beds, they'd insisted on bunk beds, wanting to stay close. Emma asked the question he'd been expecting. "Do you think Daddy, our first daddy, would be happy about today?" John sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. They'd had the conversation about Thomas Blackwood's death months ago, but Emma still sometimes needed reassurance that she hadn't betrayed his memory by accepting a new father. "I think your first daddy loved you so much that he taught you how to survive until you found someone safe to love you. And I think he'd be proud that you were brave enough to let yourselves be loved." Lily leaned down from the top bunk. "Plus, we have 2 daddies now. One who's in heaven making sure we're safe, and one who's here making pancakes and fixing our bikes." "That's a pretty good deal," Emma agreed sleepily. After the girls fell asleep, John walked through his house, their house, looking at the evidence of their life together. Maya's artwork mixed with Lily's paintings on the refrigerator. Emma's engineering books stacked next to John's automotive manuals. Family photos that included all of them, chosen and biological family mixed together without distinction. On the kitchen table sat a letter from the Thomas Blackwood Foundation, a charity the girls had helped establish with their inheritance, providing support for children who'd lost their parents. Emma served on the board, despite being only 10. Lily designed their promotional materials. They were healing the world by healing themselves. Outside, Minnesota winter was giving way to spring, and John could see the first green shoots in the girls' garden. Some families were born, others were chosen. The best ones, John had learned, were both. If you believe that family is defined by love and choice rather than blood and biology, and that heroes are often just ordinary people who refuse to walk away when someone needs help, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We keep the human stories alive. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.